what's intertwined with those definitions before I move on.
The Honourable Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, you are not shy about writing me when you have a question, and we always do our best to try to send back what we feel is the appropriate answer. And I don't know if you always agree with those answers, but you've always been respectful of them. Basically, you've got various options, quite a number actually, for people with disabilities. Starting with the small option home, which is a home that houses 3 or less residents or clients, and as such, it does not require a license, although that's something that may change with the renewal initiative. And the licensing sets certain standards, which you get when you go to 4, and then in essence you've got a group home, although group homes would tend to be larger than 4. By definition, once you get to 4, you have to be licensed and therefore meet certain prescribed regulations and other policies. So that's your difference there. If you're talking about residential care, that I believe what you're referring to is when people, adults, basically are kept in a home, in the traditional home, and supported with a per diem on the part of the department, which is another thing which, by the way, is advocated in the discussion paper. And I think that's a great way of enhancing not only the resident's life, but in many cases, I think it's good for the, if you will, it's almost like a foster home situation, except that instead of with a child or a youth, it's an adult. But still, I'm sure that the bonds that form are very, very much the same as within any family.
The Honourable Member for Hants East.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister. Well, I want to bring it to the Minister's attention because I've talked with the manager at Corridor Community Options in Enfield. I've spoken with the people in charge of the Lance residential programs there, and at Lance residential programs, they get inquiries, 2 to 3 inquiries per month of people looking for residential placements, and in the group homes, I think they've had roughly I think about 5 people in recent times who have had to be moved out of our area due to lack of facilities. So for us, it seems that it is important that the province does look at the need. I think I guess it's over the past 3 years that they've had 5 individuals who have left the Corridor Community Options program and to move to other parts of the province looking for residential placement. And the manager at that facility says they have 8 to 10 individuals who will require residential placement in the next 5 to 10 years, and half will probably be in a crisis situation due to illness or death of a parent or guardian. They've had roughly 14 calls in the last 18 months for families of adults with intellectual disabilities that are looking now or will be looking in the next 5 years for placement. So it would seem to me that there is a very great need in my area for placements, and the minister's response to me in this regard is that there's nothing from the department to indicate that the need is there. I want to ask the minister, it would seem to me that there would be maybe 2 or 3 different programs: income support program, support for adults, and I'm wondering if these programs actually share any of their records, because if one of them is getting information, or both of them, but they don't share them with each other, then it would seem to me that there's no accurate form of information that would indicate the appropriate need in any particular area.
Thank you for the question. Recognize at this time the Minister of Community Services.
Could the member just confirm again the two programs that
Excuse me until I announce you. The member from Hants East. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to run the clock. Income supports and supports for adults.
The Minister of Community Services.
So, to be specific, employment support and income assistance and the community supports for adults programs, okay, the umbrella programs. The member has perhaps heard us speak of integrated case management as an advance in the way that we store and disseminate information within the department. And in fact, what the member has put his finger on is something that does hold some promise for better service to those that we're there to serve. And indeed, this is one of the things that we hope to capture with this, because with integrated case management, the information about a client who may be in community supports for adults, who may apply for employment support and income assistance, or vice versa, will be readily transferable. Indeed, also with housing services. These programs all have a common thread, and we feel that by making that available to the various caseworkers at the press of a button, it will accomplish what the member is referring to. So there is a recognition that we can do better, and steps are being taken. $2.5 million in this year's tangible capital asset budget to actually pursue this initiative.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Hants East.
Well, that's fine, Mr. Minister, and I hope that actually works. But I guess the final word for me is that the need in my constituency is far greater than what the department seems to think, and I will be I'll be following this up, with correspondence. I want to raise the issue in my area of I think there's 5 seniors facilities, and actually that includes one rest home, which. But the seniors facilities, the other 4 that are under the purview of the province, I think there's 3 of those that do not have elevators, and this is something I think we've talked about before. I don't think that I can emphasize enough, and the minister, I think the minister can certainly visualize the importance of elevators to seniors. It was raised on the floor of this House during question period. I hear the number being bounced around $100,000 per facility. So to me, this doesn't seem like a lot of money, and I've been there at the MLA for 6 years. In 6 years, we haven't gotten one elevator in one facility, so I'm not sure where you're spending it, but if you're spending it in other facilities, I think that's great. But certainly in my area, one every 6 years doesn't seem to be asking for too much, and if it's $100,000. So I'd like to know what's the holdup. I mean, if you're going to justify that you can't spend $100,000 in my constituency per year for one facility, or 6 years, you're going to have to go and make a strong case for that. So,
thank you. The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I personally am not familiar with all the seniors complexes across the province. As you'd appreciate, we've got 7,700 units, and I do try to get out and get a sense of the services we provide, and indeed not only the services we provide, but perhaps a geographical sense of what's out there. But as it pertains to the specific seniors residence is in your constituency, I guess that the questions that I would ask is, well, how many people are on the second floor? Like the one that we announced at the Captain William Spry Centre, I think that there were something like 20 apartments, or 20 or 40 apartments up on the second floor. I can't remember, it was 38 apartments in total and 20 on the second floor, or was it 38 on the ground floor and 40 above? But the point is that there were a lot of people that benefited from that $125,000 investment. And kudos to the member and the former member from Halifax Atlantic, and also the area councillor, who was very conscientious in this, and he took his $10,000 in discretionary money, and he also offered it to the department. So the case was certainly made over a period of time that preceded my becoming minister. So I was very pleased to be able to make that announcement. I'm not sure how that compares in your constituency. I do point out that 85% are accessible either without the use of stairs, whether that's ground floor or whether it's because they have an elevator. But ultimately, that is 17 out of 20, and as is in the case of the question that was brought up in question period, I think last week by the leader of the opposition, your leader, I think he was referring to 4 apartments, or 4 units, each had 4 apartments, 2 upstairs, 2 down. 3 of them had elevators, and his point was, well, you should put an elevator in the 4th. Well, I guess that my answer to him would be is, if one of your units, say, has 20 people on the second floor, and whereas 14 out of 16 in this unit, or this complex, have already got accessibility without having to use the stairs, I would rather look to the complex in your area, honourable member, as an example.
Thank you, Minister. I'd like to recognize the member from Hants East.
Well, I'm going to try to sum up my comments. Well, I would say that if for any reason you look to the facilities in my constituency, I would appreciate. They are not so low as 4 individuals. There's more apartments, but not 20. I have 5. Like I say, I have 5 seniors facilities and 1 rest home. Of the 5 that are provincial, there is 1 that's a ground floor. It only has 1 story, in other words, and 1 already has an elevator, the one in Shubenacadie, but the other 3 do not. So I push a case for those individuals. And in summary, Mr. Minister, I just want to raise the issue of those facilities generally. The Shubenacadie one comes to mind because there was some work, I understand, that was supposed to happen there on the replacement of siding and so on, that the residents feel, for whatever reason, went to the facility in Maitland, which is still in my constituency, so I'm glad for that, but they're not. But I think I've written the minister around the case of the Shubenacadie Sunnybrook facility. So with that, I'm not sure that I actually got a clear answer as to why facilities in my area haven't been able to receive an elevator, at least 1 every 6 years. And but I will continue to press the minister, because I see this as a safety issue as much as anything. And I know, as one senior in my area put it, and she's not in a facility, she's just still in her own home, luckily. She said, John, when you get old, you don't want to be forgotten. And I've lived by that, and I think the people in my area do not ask for too much. And there are lots of days when I think they don't get too much, and that's the reason I'm speaking on their behalf. I thank the minister for his response, and if he has additional one, that'd be great. But I know there's other members of my caucus who want to speak. So,
okay, I'd like to recognize the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the record, I was not sure about the number of units on the second floor of the Captain William Spry Centre. It's 38 units in total, with 20 on the second floor. I was trying to do that from memory, and I've had some assistance to refresh my memory.
Thank you, Minister. I'd like to thank the member from Dartmouth, Hants East, for his comments and questioning this afternoon. Appreciate that. And at this time, I would like to recognize the member from Dartmouth South Portland Valley from the NDP caucus. And member, you have around about 9 minutes, less than 9 minutes in turn. And then we're going to recognize the Liberal caucus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, I wanted to pursue the question of caseload and just how your budget is going to alleviate some of the concerns that have been raised over the past couple of years. And I know you're familiar with a couple of the reports, the impact report and the caseload overload report from the NSGEU. And they both identify the tremendous pressure on workers because of the large volume of clients that they're expected to serve within their individual caseloads. And there was some indication last fall that the department might meet with the NSGEU to address vacancies and overuse of casual staff. So I'm wondering, has that meeting been held?
Minister of Community Services.
Yes, I thank the member opposite for bringing that up, and she might remember that in my opening remarks on Thursday evening I spoke about the 16% drop in the caseload, but we have maintained the 235 positions, income assistance recipients, income assistance case workers, plus we've got the employment support staff there, which carry a different responsibility, but still they're serving in many cases the same clients. So not only has there been a drop in the caseload to the tune of 16%, but we've provided other services to serve those clients, which hopefully should lighten the load of those case workers. With regards to a meeting with the NSGEU, I think that it would be always constructive to have the managers meet with them. I know that I was approached about a year ago, just prior to going into the RRSS strike, or perhaps it was shortly thereafter, and that was a rather awkward time because I was being pressed to step into the negotiations, and it was not my role to do so because I was not the employer. I funded the employer through grants, or excuse me, the department funded the employer through grants. So for that reason, it was not an appropriate time to be meeting with the union president.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize the member from Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you. I think we've talked before about that there's much more pressure in the metro area, and the complexity of a lot of the individual needs is quite high here. So I'm not sure that, you know, reducing by 16, especially I understand that for some of the employment support and income assistance workers, the staff to client ratio is 1 to 160. So even a few people being dropped off that is not going to relieve the pressure. I understand that part of the caseload overload report did have a recommendation that the department join with the union and set up a joint labor management committee to develop some guidelines and monitor the caseload. And I'm wondering, is there any interest on the department's part to implement that committee?
Thank you for the question, and I'll direct that question to the Minister of Community Services.
I thank the honourable member for her question. Also, with regards to those ratios, it would be appropriate to point out that while some may be higher, quite often the caseloads are not homogeneously challenging, because if you've got say a stable clientele, because almost 50% of the people that are on community services now, or the cases on community services, are basically long-term disability cases with limited prospects for employment, or at least full-time employment. So as a result of that, those cases are more static, and one could argue that it would be more manageable to handle a higher caseload in that regard. But in some of the other cases which the member is referring to, where there's challenges, and with the challenges opportunities, it may require more hands-on assistance, and the caseworker is an invaluable person to not only to the province, but most particularly to the client, who often very much appreciates that chance to get the guidance from the caseworker and advice and generally assistance to and support. I guess the support would perhaps be the best term. When it comes to labor negotiations and working with the unions, one thing that I'm not sure is perhaps fully appreciated by the public and perhaps even by members is the importance of the Public Service Commission in this regard. Because whenever negotiations come up, the Public Service Commission is committed to trying to make sure that things are done consistently right across the board within government, that there's an element of fairness as well, of course, as sustainability in any agreements. And so I just wanted to point out that the Public Service Commission may also perhaps have a role in this.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to give you an example, Minister, I understand that this field staff budget for community support for adults is less than budgeted for last year, although it's indicated elsewhere that there are considerable pressures in that program. I believe you've budgeted approximately $67,000 less, so I'm wondering how you justify that in light of the workload situation.
Thank you for the question, and I'll direct that to the Minister of Community Services. Thank you, member.
I believe the member is referring to 4.8 in the estimates books, second line. Okay. While the estimate to estimate may be down, I think that if one was to check the actual forecast to be spent in 2003-2004, one would find that the estimate for 2004-2005 is up about 90,000.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Dartmouth South, Portland Valley.
Well, that must be the result then of money that was budgeted not being spent. So what would be the explanation for that if that's one of the pressure areas in one of the high need programs?
Thank you for the question. Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Honourable Member. One of the things that a large department such as ours encounters is that there's just a natural turnover, whether it's because of retirement or other opportunities coming along. So there's always a vacancy factor. So even though we may budget for a certain amount for salaries and wages, inevitably, because of the vacancy factor, it is often the case that you're not going to make full use of your estimate.
Thank you, Minister. Time is finished this evening for the NDP caucus, the member from Dartmouth South, Portland Valley, and we thank you for your questions this afternoon. At this time, I would like to recognize a member from the Liberal caucus, the member from Kings West, the time being 6:22. You have 1 hour, member, and that'll pretty well bring us to conclusion for this evening. So you do have the floor. Member from Kings West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to the Minister of Community Services. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to both make a few comments and ask a few questions in this area. One of the first, I guess, great realities I discovered as an MLA is certainly a good number of calls in a rural constituency regarding people's concerns and issues who are on community services. And certainly this possibly was addressed on Friday, but I certainly am not aware of the minister's response. And knowing income assistance level that an adult, single adult, in fact, has to live on, the amount of $180. And I presently have one such client who is waiting to meet with the minister to outline how that impacts on her quality of life over a period of time. And I'm just wondering how often is this reviewed, and in fact, is there a current process going on to in fact, to review the income assistance for an adult.
Thank you. I'd like to recognize the Minister of Community Services.
I thank the member opposite for the question, and member, I want you to know that if I were in your position today and you were in mine, you would have been getting the same question. But in essence, it has been, as I understand it, something like 10 years since this has been done. And at the risk of repeating myself, because I know that not all members can be in the main chamber at the same time because there are competing responsibilities, but this is something that has been of concern to me for some time. I've shared it with my colleagues. The Premier also brought up the question as to how can we perhaps help more in this area. He asked me specifically about supporting food banks, and the answer that came back from the food banks was the best thing you can basically do for us is to put us out of business as it pertains to the Department of Community Services. Please increase the basic personal allowance. So that is why on October the 1st, there is going to be a $4 increase in the basic personal allowance for all adults that are on the caseload. It's covers the difference between what the market basket measure, which was produced by Statistics Canada for being able to, for an adult being able to provide a healthy diet of $135, and what's currently there for $131. We're going into the summer season. Hopefully, with the harvest, the cost of the market value measure may drop. And on October the 1st, I'm looking forward to covering that differential. And honourable member, I can tell you that my colleagues already know that with the cost of inflation and everything, that they can count on having this discussion again going into next year. We're also looking at shelter allowances across the province. Your colleague, the member from Clare, brought up the differential in the availability of public transit. We are going through our first review. It's been about 3 years since the new program was brought in on October the 31st of 2001, and these are some of the questions that have come out of it. But the member clearly has an appreciation of the challenges of trying to live on $180 in a month, and I share those concerns.
The member from Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. One of the other areas that I've been discovering over the last number of months dealing with people on community services, while caseworkers do thorough reviews, in other words, of what they are able to access from community service programs. However, there are occasions when certainly clients aren't familiar with the entire amounts that are available and areas covered. And I know that this is available by way of the internet. Most of this is available. However, is there anything in terms of booklet form or information that can be made available to clients? Because I know many of them do not have a computer to access the information, and I find it a little bit disconcerting when I, as an MLA, have to point out that, in fact, this is an area which could indeed be getting some coverage. So my question to the Minister then is what source of information is available to clients' community services so that they are aware of all of the areas, in fact, that they could be getting some support in.
Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Honourable Member. A very reasonable question, and a question that we've been working on for the last year and a half, is it? Year and a half? For the last year and a half under the leadership of Charlie MacDonald, who was seconded as Executive Director of the Disabled Persons Commission to go out and meet with all the various groups, and clearly clients, families, advocacy groups, service providers, to produce this booklet, which last week I committed to distribute to all members of the House. And I'm looking forward to the answer from my communications director as to when this is going to happen. And the answer is that she asked that they be sent over today. So that commitment came from Friday, and the day is not over yet, so we still may be in time. But if not, honourable member, you can be the first to have one. It's a good question. It's very user-friendly, and you don't have to have access to the internet. So if I could ask a page, please, to... perhaps we could have a page?
Are you tabling this? Or
No, I am providing it to the honourable member.
Thank you. You also should have a booklet, Minister, to table, because if you refer to or speak from any piece of paper or booklet, then also you have to table one for the perusal of the rest of the House. So I'd like to recognize the member from Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Mr. Minister. That may be the most timely question I will ever ask here in the House, to have such a quick delivery. One of the areas that I have come across that I found perhaps the most disconcerting, perhaps of all the cases, and that is of a student who recently in public talked about her case being a disabled student who was receiving community services, also received a Canada student loan, and then had clawback from the Canada student loan because she is on community services. And I'm wondering if, in fact, that is a natural process that does go on, or if this is an individual case. I'd like to have some enlightenment in that regard, because I think when somebody who is disabled, who is making every effort to improve themselves, upgrade, go back to school, and in fact, through the Nova Scotia Community College, having a great chance to enhance her life, and then she has to have an additional burden while she is going through her study time. So I'm wondering if this clawback of a Canada student loan is a normal process, or is there some anomaly perhaps that she was experiencing. And she had actually announced this in a public forum at the College of Geographic Sciences just a couple of weeks ago.
The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And honourable member, I just want to confirm that it was the Canada student loan that clawed back an amount when they learned that she was on community services as a disabled client?
The member from Kings West.
It was the provincial community services that was now clawing back some of her Canada student loan, because she now had more income than what community services felt that she should be receiving.
The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I always think it's good to be answering the right question. So as my old industrial arts teacher told us, it's better to measure twice and saw once. Honourable member, I wonder whether she has applied to the Employment Assistance for Persons with Disabilities program, because one area which we cost share 50-50 with the federal government is this. We've just basically signed an extension to it with some improvements in terms of the program delivery and accountability, but it is in essence a continuation of the same program, and that is the one instance where people can that are on social assistance can actually go on to university if they meet the criteria of this program. And whenever you can meet those qualifications, clearly it would be advantageous to be under that program, because that would be a grant program as opposed to one that would involve loans.
Thank you, Minister. The member from Kings West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And I will actually, now that you have given me a bit more information, I will check back with her and see, in fact, if that is the case that she is experiencing. I do have a number of questions regarding the document renewing the community supports for adult programs. I know it's a discussion paper, but it certainly does embrace many of the current policies and does reflect on some, certainly some existing programs. One of the references there that starts out is talking about 3,160 clients that are in supported living situations, and it says 540 are in vocational placements. If there are just the 540 in vocational placements, I'm wondering what would be the possible programs that many of that other group, that remaining group, would in fact be engaging in. And I just ask this as a background question to start out, a series of questions that I hope to have the opportunity tomorrow to ask about. Our time was kind of predetermined for today as to who would share it, so this is just a first background question with this group with only 540 in vocational settings. What would the others be involved in terms of a program?
Thank you for the question, and I'll direct that to the Minister of Community Services.
I thank the member opposite for his question. In essence, what you're asking, honourable member, is what's the continuum of supports out there for our community supports for adults clients, and making specific reference to the fact that only a small portion are in adult service centres. The supports, of course, have to be customized to the ability of the client. So if the client's abilities are such that they could go out with basically an outreach employment program such as we have at the Flower Cart, the member opposite shares the Michelin plant with me. The constituency boundary goes right through the middle of the plant, and the member might be interested to know that the Flower Cart actually has, in essence, sponsored 20 clients with Michelin that are being paid wages above the minimum wage, sometimes significantly above the minimum wage, not perhaps at the level enjoyed by most Michelin employees, but still it's a very positive aspect of this. So that would account for some. They are more able, and with minimum supervision, particularly after getting into a routine, they're able to function quite nicely. With regards to some others, their abilities may not allow them even to function in an adult service center. So it depends very much on the abilities of the client, but we always try to provide the appropriate support and stimulation for all clients. So it just depends on their own abilities.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the member for his question, and like to recognize now the member from Cape Breton West in the Liberal Caucus. You have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, just a few little questions for the Minister. My first question is with regards to adoptions. How many adoptions took place in Nova Scotia in the past year?
Minister of Community Services.
I'm getting that number for the honourable member, but my recollection is it was 97. I haven't seen the number for perhaps a month, so it's somewhere in the 90s. And as a caveat to, perhaps a supplemental to that answer, in anticipation of the member's next question, there should be more adoptions in Nova Scotia. That is an area where we as a society can do better.
Thank you. The member from Cape Breton West.
Are the number of adoptions in Nova Scotia up or down from the last 5 years?
Minister of Community Services.
The numbers over the last 2 or 3 years are more or less static. I'm not sure where they were 5 years ago, but there's a flurry of activity over here, and if that number is available, it will be given. But this leads to the adoption initiative that we want to undertake. We know that there are opportunities there, and in fact, where credit is due, it should be given. Under the Early Childhood Development Program, in fact, we can draw on those funds to do the consultation as to what are the obstacles to providing that needed family, that loving and caring family home for children, which is the best possible outcome. And just a second, Honourable Member, we're okay. 1999, 2000, 92 children, 2000, 2001, 94 children, and 2002, 2003, 90 children. We missed one there. 2001, 2002, 96, and then 2002, 2003, 90. So going backwards, 90, 96, 94, 92. So static and in about there. And I think that last year it was actually 97.
Cape Breton West.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many of those were to single-parent families?
I'd like to recognize the Minister of Community Service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Honourable Member. As you would appreciate, adoption goes through a comprehensive process. There's a home study. Clearly that information would be in those files, but it has not been analyzed to that kind of detail, at least here for the estimates.
Cape Breton West, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little surprised because he indicated he's talking less than 100 over the course of a year. How many were issued to same-sex couple marriages?
I'd like to recognize the Minister of Community Services.
I'm not able to give the specific answer, but I will give a philosophical answer, is that it's based on the recommendation that comes from the home study, and it's the home that we're concerned about. Is that a place that will provide the loving, caring, nurturing environment for that child to grow and flourish and become a happy, contributing member of society? It's all about the child. That's the focus, less upon the vehicle. So if the parents, the adoptive parent or parents that apply meet the expectations of the department, and that will come through a home study, that's our concern. Is it good for the child? And if it's good for the child, then it's good for society.
I'd like to recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can the Minister confirm if there's at least one family to which an adoption has taken place of same-sex couples?
Thank you for the question. Direct that to the Minister of Community Services.
As I mentioned before, that type of minute detail is not readily available to us here today. Again, the concern is whether it's in the best interest of the child. If it has been judged by professional social workers or whoever does the home study that it is in the best interest of the child, then presumably the courts would approve it.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the Minister undertake to provide that information no later than tomorrow when budgets resume?
Minister, Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure how readily accessible that information would be, because I'm not sure that we would necessarily categorize those kind of attributes of the parents. Again, the concern is whether it meets the criteria that we set for providing a caring and loving family for that child. If it meets that criteria, the recommendation comes forward from the home study and then from the Children's Aid Society, and it's adopted by the court, then really that is the concern. What is best for the child?
The member from Cape Breton West.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Order, please. I'd like to recognize the member from Dartmouth North. And for what purpose are you standing, sir?
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, and I just want on a point of order around this particular question with respect to adoption. Would this not, and excuse me, I should say to the honourable member from Kings West, if he would allow me the opportunity.
Member, are you standing to ask a question, or are you standing on a point of order?
On a point of, well, I will ask the question.
Well, then would the member from Cape Breton West allow for a question? And would that be directed to the minister or to the member from Cape Breton West?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it will be directed to the minister, definitely not the member for Cape Breton West.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank the honourable member for the opportunity to ask this question, because I'm curious, as a member of the legislature sitting down here, and listening to the question by the honourable member, and yet the minister did not speak. Would this be in violation of in fact, the Adoptions Act with respect to readily identifying those individuals?
Minister of Community Services, answer to the member from Dartmouth North. Order, please. Order, please. The minister has been asked the question, and give him an opportunity to answer the question.
I am not a lawyer, and I'm not able to answer that question. However, the member's point is well taken, and I have tried to address my answers to the member from Cape Breton West as to what is best for the children, and certainly we would not be disclosing personal information about either the child or the parents. Now, whether keeping statistics or not is somehow or other breaches the act, I would think that based on the member asking the question, we should also answer that question before we try to provide that sort of answer. And I thank the member opposite for his intervention.
Thank you, Minister. I recognize at this time the member from Cape Breton West with his continued questioning.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's the question I ask is very fundamental to a number of socio-economic issues that are associated with adoption. In much the same context as I asked how many adoptions were approved for single families, or like for single parent families. That's no different than married couple, heterosexual, married couple, same sex, or common law, or whatever. And it's general statistical information. And while I appreciate the comments from the member North for him to try and put a little bit of asset onto a very important issue for political purposes, that's up to himself. But I don't think it's very difficult for the minister to provide some very important information. He's indicated very clearly he's dealing with less than 100 applications, approved applications in a year. That's one every 3 days, one in less than every 3 days. And if is he indicating that he cannot provide that information by tomorrow?
Thank you for the question, member, and I'll direct that now to the Minister of Community Services.
I thank the member opposite for his question. It begs the debate that's going on in this country about many other issues, including things like same-sex marriages, which undoubtedly perhaps is prompting his line of questioning here today. And again, my concern will always be for the benefit of the children within what is allowed in terms of disclosure within the Act. So if it's allowed within the Act, if we're keeping track of such things, then I'd be happy to provide it. But it's with that caveat that I make the statement. And again, my concern as minister is what's in the best interest of the children.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly appreciate that. He's answered 5 different questions with the same answer. So let's not beat a dead horse here. We know what the primary focus is, and that's the welfare of the child, the best interest of the child. That's a given. So I'll save the minister from standing back up and pressing the same button, replay. The question is, can he tell us if there's been at least one couple, same-sex couple, made application for an adoption in the province of Nova Scotia in the past year? Yes or no?
The Minister of Community Services.
I thank the member opposite. I would suggest that that is a matter that should be dealt with by the Home Study and the Children's Aid Society and ultimately by the courts. If it passes that test, then that the child is being provided with the loving and the caring and loving environment that the child needs to grow up in, then it has passed the test of this minister.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Well, again, he's pressed the button replay, but that wasn't my question. So, given the fact that the minister doesn't want to answer the question, we'll move on to some other issues. The member for Dartmouth North would make a great cheerleader. But the only difficulty is he has to watch his blood pressure. Mr. Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to draw to the Minister's attention a number of issues on the supplement to the public accounts on pages 34, 35, and so on. So we could start there.
Order, please. Order. The member from Cape Breton West has the floor, and I believe you directed the question to the minister. So noisy, member, I couldn't hear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to get the minister's attention to this page first, and then we'll go into the detail. With the minister, I noticed there are a number of different companies that are identified in here with regards to, I would presume, leaseholds. There's Nova Corp Properties, not so much that one, I suppose, but there's Parsons Investments Limited, $436,472.80. And there's Universal Property Management, $666,552.63 on page 35. And I know there are some other ones in the supplement as well. Could the minister indicate what those figures were for?
The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we caught the first company. We were busily scrolling through the page. Parsons Investments. Parsons Investments is a landlord, so we rent from Parsons Investments. I think there's a number of locations. I know one is in North Sydney, isn't it?
Sydney, Windsor, New Glasgow.
Sydney, Windsor, New Glasgow.
Thank you, the member Cape Breton West.
What's the cost per square footage that's being paid to Parsons Investments Limited for their leaseholds?
The Minister of Community Services.
Before the department undertakes to rent space, of course, we do that through the Department of Transportation and Public Works. They're the ones that basically do those negotiations. So there is a process that has gone through to make sure that we're getting best value for the taxpayer's dollar. It is a competitive process, and I think that tomorrow, when the Minister of Transportation and Public Works has a chance to defend his estimates, he would be well positioned to answer those sorts of questions.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is the minister indicating that he cannot tell us how much they're paying per square foot out of his budget?
The Minister of Community Services.
The Minister of Community Services goes on the record as understanding that we provide community services. The Department of Transportation and Public Works provides property services. We rely on their expertise to advise us in that regard. It is a collaborative relationship, just like with the Department of Health, the Department of Education, the Department of Justice. We all have a role to play. The honourable member is asking a question that would be best answered by the Minister of Transportation and Public Works as we work with his department.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Mr. Speaker, that is categorically and factually incorrect. This line item was charged and paid for directly from the community services to Parsons Investments Limited. It was not paid through the Department of Transportation and Public Works. It may have been negotiated through the Department of Transportation and Public Works, but the money is coming directly out of the minister's department. What I need to know is how much money is being paid per square foot out of his department for this particular business.
The Minister of Community Services.
As I stated previously, we depend on the Department of Transportation and Public Works to assist us in making those decisions. Once they make a recommendation and we are the tenant, it's clearly we're the ones that pay the rent, but it's done on the advice of the department with the expertise in that area. To suggest that the rent is a homogeneous amount across the province, I'm sure the member opposite knows that it would vary depending on whether you're in downtown Halifax or if you're in perhaps Ecum-Secum, which I believe resides in the chair's constituency. With a okay, it is now within the it is now within the member for Guysborough Sheet Harbour's constituency, but it would have a population of substantially less than the city and probably a different rental arrangement. So clearly, it depends on the rent on the demand for space in the area in question.
Thank you,
I think the member opposite would realize that.
The member from Cape Breton West.
What flipper-flopper talk. That's all that is. That's all that is. The minister is spending over $600,000 of the taxpayers' money directly out of his budget. He's paying it to a private corporation and refuses to provide not only members of this committee, but the people of Nova Scotia, the detail as to how much they're paying per square foot. The ministers in line departments, Department of Finance, Department of Education, they had no problem providing that. Why is the minister suppressing this information from the committee? Why will he not tell the people of Nova Scotia how much is being paid for rental of properties to his department? I'm asking point blank, how much is being paid on a per square foot basis to Parsons Investments Limited?
The Minister of Community Services.
And I thank the member opposite for his intervention. I would point out that the member opposite represents the Liberal Party in Nova Scotia, and if Nova Scotians that are watching this feel that somebody that gets up and asks the cost per square foot of rent that's scattered all over the province, in this case we've got 3 different units, and he's demanding the price per square foot without identifying the location that he's talking about, that I think does not fairly represent the Liberal Party, but you do represent the Liberal Party during these estimates.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since we want to deal with the remedial approach in logic, since that's the minister's approach, let's go there. Would the minister please identify the names of the properties that were leased from Parsons Investments Limited, and how much per square foot on each property that was leased? Could he please provide that, or is that too heavy a question for him?
Recognize the Minister of Community Services.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, I will try to maintain the dignity that should be afforded to this honourable chamber here. As I answered the first time, there are 3 locations. One is in Sydney, one is in New Glasgow, and one is in North Sydney. If the honourable member wants a specific on one of them, we will endeavour to get them. The member opposite is indicating he wants to know the total amount. I can give him the total amount. If he thinks that we know the square footage here with all the properties that we rent across the province and have it broken down to a per square foot number, readily accessible at our fingers in this chamber, he's mistaken. And if Nova Scotians find that to be a shortcoming in this minister, then I'll accept that. But I would suggest that those numbers have been calculated before we went forward, and the total is 464,000? 436. $436,472.80 for all three. And if the member wants us to go out and endeavor to get the square footage and the breakdown so that he can have them, we would be pleased to accommodate the honourable member.
Thank you, Minister. The member from Cape Breton West, with approximately 23 minutes left in turn.
Mr. Chairman, it took 5 questions for it to finally sink into the minister. That's exactly what I asked for, and Hansard will show that I asked for that detail. Even the previous question just before I'm standing up now, I asked for the per square footage in each of those properties. So why the minister has to kind of keep regurgitating in circles so as to avoid the answer, if he doesn't have it at his fingertips, I can appreciate that. But the least the minister could do was give an undertaking that he will provide it in a reasonable time frame. And likewise, too, for universal property management, which is paid $666,552.63. How many properties, where are those properties, and how much per square foot on each of these properties?
Recognize the Minister of Community Services.
Okay, so there's office space, Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Universal Property Management is the owner of Nelson Place. Nelson Place is where we have our head office. Again, we're not familiar with the exact square footage of any of the many properties that we rent across the province, but in terms of the total rent that's paid to them, $666,552.63. That's, the honourable member has the numbers. The honourable member would know that one should never ask a question unless one has the answer. And the honourable member clearly has the answer.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Well, I have part of the answer. I don't have the price per square foot, and that's what I need. So if the minister is indicating that he will provide that, that's fine. And there's also for the Hardman Group, $235,039.20. Would the minister give an undertaking to provide similar detail? What that's for, the cost per square foot, and what locations? Would that be okay? I'll take it on notice.
Minister.
I would be happy to provide that undertaking for those 3 landlords.
The member from Cape Breton West.
On page 34 of the supplement, there's a line item there, DMR Consulting, Inc., $1,029,399.85. Could the minister please apprise members of the committee as to what that line figure is for?
The Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A good question, by the way, honourable member. That's a significant amount of money, and it is it's the software support to our IT system for income assistance.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can the minister indicate as to whether there's been any type of a satisfaction survey done within his department, much the same as what was done in other departments? I know there was one conducted with the Department of Environment and Labour a few years ago, just determining whether the employees were generally satisfied with their workplace, their job description, just the overall, there was a whole series of questions done. Was there any type of a survey done for staff within the Department of Community Services? And if so, what are the results?
The Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. An honourable member, that's the sort of thing that's it's done by the Public Service Commission. In fact, there's one currently underway, I believe.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Well, thank you. I am aware of that, but has there been one done internally within the Department of Community Services in the last couple of years?
The Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. There would not have been a formal one per se, but some of what the member refers to is being addressed in other ways. We now have an employee newsletter that comes out on a quarterly basis, and just generally trying to grow as a department, as a team to serve Nova Scotians in need.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you. I'd like to switch the focus just slightly. It's an issue that was raised a little earlier, but perhaps I'm looking for a specific figure, if it's possible. Can the minister indicate how many wheelchairs does the department own that they have either in storage or out on loan or what? How many does the department own altogether as an asset?
The Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The nature of the department's involvement in this would be to purchase them for clients where they meet certain criteria. And as was mentioned earlier, we're also looking at, of course, a program, a pilot project in conjunction with the Abilities Foundation for providing chairs to children. But in terms of warehousing wheelchairs, that is not something that we do in the department. Where the client qualifies, we would make the purchase for them, and then it would belong to the client.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Yes. Does the minister and his department have an inventory of how many wheelchairs are out there presently?
The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, that is something that we are turning our attention to as a result of the commitment that we made through the blueprint. But in terms of whether the department has one, no, the department does not have one, but through the King's Regional Rehabilitation Centre, I know they track surplus wheelchairs across the province and try to do the matching. So there is the essence of this out there, and as the department funds the King's Regional Rehabilitation Centre, I suppose some might draw some connection, but I think I'm going to give the credit to the folks at the King's Regional Rehabilitation Centre.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair. I acknowledge and congratulate the King's group as well. But the issue is the department is expending considerable amounts of money and not tracking how many chairs it has out there. So there could be some duplication. There could be some situations where these wheelchairs are no longer being used. I know I've spoken to representatives from the Disabled Persons Commission, and they are quite frustrated with the fact that the department does not know how many wheelchairs are out there. And in some cases, where there's a demand, there's a I don't know if you'd use the word surplus, but there are wheelchairs that are out there that could be utilized, that are not being utilized. So, but the minister's already acknowledged that his department doesn't do proper tracking on that particular issue. So we'll leave it at that there. Now, my next question.
Excuse me, order. The minister is ready to answer the pass. Yeah, just 1 second. The member is not finished questioning.
Yes, but I guess I'm standing on a point of order. I think that the member has misconstrued my comments in terms of the department's responsibility for the wheelchair.
But Minister,
I want to just put that on the record.
Yeah, in due respect, you could have informed the member of that information when he's finished his question. So the member has the floor, Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. He's already acknowledged that his department doesn't know how many are out there. Simple as that. So he's got a long ways to go. It's an issue on a slightly different topic, and an issue I raised in this House, I would say, in 1989, maybe 1990. And it's something that you'll see a lot of in the private sector, and it's with regards to the issue of reverse mortgage annuity. Now, several years back when the Bob Rae government took took power in Ontario, they developed a similar type program. And it's for public housing. And I made a proposal here in Nova Scotia that we should examine not exactly that as being proposed by the private sector, but rather an initiative whereby those individuals and families living in public housing over a period of time could acquire a certain percentage of equity in that unit if they maintain that unit to the best of their ability, and certain other criteria that were achieved, and not just in terms of maintenance, but just general repairs and a whole series of things that would allow them at a certain point in time, 10, maybe 15 years, depending upon the situation, they would, on a sliding scale, acquire equity in that unit. Thereby, it would be a win-win situation both for the department in terms of saving money, but also for those individuals and families that they would in fact get an opportunity to become a little more self-sustaining. Because one of the biggest problems I find is that people who are compelled to depend on public housing or some type of a social housing are always kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. They're just going from week to week with their budget, and they just never seem to get out of that downward spiral. And with the cost of fuel going up, and with the cost of insurance, and the cost of electricity, and the cost of telephones, cost of groceries, you name it. It's a never-ending struggle. You hear this old adage that the poor get poorer and the rich get richer. I would ask if the minister would take an opportunity to activate in very real substantive terms some possibilities around this particular issue, because we know about the issue of the aging housing stock. We know about the crunching dollars in terms of federal, provincial, like these what they call the global agreements, and so on. But and there's always with that the fact that, particularly from the federal government, they've been shying away from housing in recent years, although Minister Bradshaw, when she was in charge of this particular division, did an excellent job. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a glossy thing at election time to be refurbishing a lot of public housing units, as it is to cut ribbons for new highways or putting something new and grander up. So I don't know if that was part of the the political mindset or what, but I think there's a real lost opportunity here for the department and for a lot of people in Nova Scotia that always seem to be just below the threshold of getting a break, so as to help motivate them to get into the marketplace. We have the new income generating program, the federal, provincial, the national program. But I would ask the minister to give some serious consideration to this, even if it's somewhat of a hybrid from the Ontario model. I've studied the British Columbia program as well. There's something that we can take out of each one of those without locking them into the mindset that it has to be like the private sector. It's not. You're using equity. You're using human resources. You're using goodwill. You're using a lot of things that would help not only these individuals and families, but also the taxpayers of Nova Scotia. Perhaps if the minister could comment briefly on that. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left?
You have approximately, you have exactly 10 minutes and 22 seconds.
Okay. Well, I'll if the minister could give us I know my question was long, but a kind of an abbreviated version on that.
Thank you. Recognize the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Honourable Member. And Honourable Member, there is surely merit in your suggestion, and indeed everybody needs an incentive to try to get ahead in life, and that sense of ownership certainly makes a tenant who might someday be an owner perhaps take extra care in that property, and that's good for them, and I think it's good for society. This is not unlike the 5, 5, and 5 proposal that Secretary of State Stephen Mahoney brought to Nova Scotia when I first met him last August. And I would say that while there may be some elements of what the member is suggesting in our affordable housing program, his is sort of a graduated way into acquiring home ownership, and I think that it's a worthwhile suggestion. It's one that has been made elsewhere, as the member indicated. It's been tried in other jurisdictions, and perhaps someday we'll have the opportunity to bring that to Nova Scotia. I would certainly welcome that sort of program.
Thank you, Minister. The member from Cape Breton West.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was an issue I was about to raise the other day when we ran out of time, and it's with regards to transition houses, that regional plan that was put out there. The way I understood it, and from talking to representatives from the transition houses in Nova Scotia, it would appear to indicate to myself and to those representatives that in fact there's a lot of coding in the words there that would suggest that we'll see a reduction in the number of transition houses in Nova Scotia with this regional approach. Would the minister care to comment on that and indicate for members of the committee if in fact there's no intent to reduce the number of transition houses in the province?
The Minister of Community Services.
I thank the honourable member for his question. It's a question that is of considerable concern to some members in some Nova Scotians. I think the member would be pleased to know that the consultation process has already begun. In fact, it was last week that the Assistant Deputy Minister was traveling to northern Nova Scotia to start this process. And to specifically answer the member's question, I would be very surprised if the recommendation came forward to close any transition houses.
Thank you, Minister. Recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the minister for his response, because I think that's important, particularly for those that are dealing with transition houses, to have that comfort level. Just briefly, because I know I've asked about a few of those property leaseholds. There's another one there, Bonk Properties Limited, $282,241.64. Rather than get into the minutiae of it at this point, if I could get a general undertaking or an undertaking from the minister, if he would provide the list of the properties that are being leased or rented by his department, itemized, and how much is the cost per square foot and the total cost for each one. And I can just take an undertaking that perhaps within a week or 30 days he could provide that. Would that be okay?
Thank you for the question, and I'll direct that to the Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honourable member, looking at the gentleman that would be responsible for coming up with those numbers, they are nodding and say they think that can be done, so I give you that undertaking.
Thank you, Minister. At this time, I'd like to recognize the member from Cape Breton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a line item there for all occasions catering for $14,946.18. What was that catering service for? And if you could give me the details.
Thank you for the question. The Minister of Community Services. Minister.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by just confirming that this pertains to the fiscal year 02-03, these numbers that we're talking about, and that would be the meeting expenses catering for the entire year at the department's head office.
The member from Cape Breton West.
A little curious. Yeah, that's $15,000 worth of sandwiches. It seems like a little much. No, I mean, it is. It does seem like a lot of money. But if the minister has indicated it's spread out for the entire year, and it's for perhaps, people coming in. I know that there are a lot of different companies that are itemized here, consulting firms and so on. I would presume that's for providing food and beverages for these people as the meetings go on. Is that the general thrust of what it's all about, or is it just for in-house?
The Minister of Community Services.
As the member was pointing out, we do have a lot of groups that come to the head office, meet with us, and it is to accommodate all those occasions. It works out to about $1,250 a month, and given the number of people that come to visit the department, it would seem that would be a reasonable number.
The member from Cape Breton West.
Another line item there, Mr. Chair, Iron Mountain. $14,133.80. Could the minister indicate what that's for?
Thank you for the question, and I'll direct that to the Minister of Community Services. Lighten it up. Minister.
Yes, that line item is for off-site record storage.
Thank you, Minister. I'd like to recognize the member from Cape Breton West with 3 minutes. 3 minutes, member.
Well, that was my thought, that we do have facilities over in Burnside that belong to the provincial government for storage, but he's talking about records, actual confidential records, and that sort of initiative. I notice there are a number of consulting firms that are listed all through the detail there. Can the minister confirm if any of these firms that are listed here, and I don't want to go through them line by line because, I mean, number one, I'd have to wait another hour to get back to them. Number two, I think it wouldn't be fair to all members of the committee. Any of these firms, non-Nova Scotia firms, these consulting firms?
The Minister of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honourable Member, we are not able to give you an answer without scrutinizing them, but if you would like us to do so, we'd be happy to do so and get you that answer.
The member from Cape Breton West. Member, you have 2 minutes, so 2 minutes you have.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister indicated before DMR Consulting Inc., the $1 million line item, but there's another one here, CGI Information Systems and Management Consultants, almost nearly $168,000. Would the minister be able to indicate what that's for?
The Minister of Community Services.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. That is another computer consulting firm.
The member from Cape Breton West, 1 minute.
Would the minister indicate what they did for the department that warranted that expenditure?
The Minister of Community Service with less than 1 minute for an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the member opposite for his questions, because in fact, I want to first start by saying, in fact, I'm going to give the honourable member a compliment for his line of questioning.
Ooh.
Because the gentleman that's sitting to my left here has been doing this for how many years?
Too many.
He says too many years. I don't think so, because as long as I'm minister here, I want Clem here next to me to answer those questions. Clem Henneberry. He's not used to this kind of attention. But, honourable member, what I'm really saying is that you are asking questions as they pertain to the estimates. Clem is very
Order.
knowledgeable in this regard.
Order, please. Respectfully, Minister, time is finished for tonight's estimates. You can finish with your thanking comments tomorrow. I will do that. And appreciate that. And at this time, I would like to recognize the Government House Leader.
And Mr. Chairman, I move that your committee to now rise and report progress and beg leave to sit again on a future day.
Thank you, Deputy. So moved.
Chairman of the Committee on Whole House and Supply reports.
Committee has met, made progress, and begs leave to sit again.
Is it agreed? The Honourable Government House Leader.
Just move it.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, would you please call the order of business public bills for second reading?
Public bills for second reading.
Mr. Speaker, would you please start for, would you please call Bill number 70, the Municipal Law Amendment 2004 Act?
Bill number 70. The Honourable Minister of Service, Nova Scotia and Municipal Relations.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to move Bill number 70 for second reading.
Thank you. I recognize the Honourable Member for Halifax Atlantic.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to see this bill coming forward, and we'll look forward certainly to seeing what happens in law amendments. I think that it gives a great deal of, it's welcome in that it gives latitude to the municipalities to do a number of things that they have been hoping to get done for a considerable length of time. Particularly the ability to levy area rates for establishing private roads and so on. This is very much needed. And authorizing them to borrow money to for the demolition of former school buildings. My only questions would be around all of these things, and I think that they are questions which will probably be answered as this proceeds further, surrounds the actual, the protocol about the appropriation of funds, the levying. I would want to be very, very sure in giving the municipalities a greater authority to collect taxes or rates for specific purposes, to ensure that the residents are fully apprised and those who will be paying the area rates are clearly defined, and that there is, something closely resembling consensus before there is an increase. I would wonder whether there will in fact be provisions surrounding accountability for extra rates levied, whether there will be any form of ceiling amount. And I certainly hope that there will be a visible and separate levy recorded for, in addition to any assessment for these roads. Apart from that, however, certainly there is a very interesting recognition in allowing commercial daycares to, or allowing municipalities to go ahead and exempt commercial daycares from commercial taxation rates. So that's certainly catching up with the times. And the rest of it really is just much needed housekeeping changes as far as I can see, and I look forward to seeing this move forwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognize the Honourable Member for Victoria the Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I took advantage today of the opportunity with a couple of the workers or employees from municipal relations to walk through the Act step by step and question each and every article that was brought forward. I was satisfied to say that most of it was basically what I referred to as common sense articles that should have and could have been added a long time ago, and it's good to see that they were added today. There was basically no surprises it appeared to me to be beneficial to the municipalities, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I don't think I'm going to debate it very much, because what I heard this afternoon was satisfactory to myself. And like I said, housekeeping things were all that were added, and a lot of common sense put into it. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I don't have. I did question something on the municipal. We even got into the Municipal Elections Act a little bit, and was satisfied with what I heard there. And having 12 years in municipal relations, and as a local councillor and warden, they were things that we could have used back then, and I'm sure that all the municipalities could use now. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll be looking forward to it going into to debate for law amendments. And with that, I'll turn the time over to my colleague, Mr. McKinnon here.
Order, please. Just remind all members to refer to other members by their constituency, please. The honourable member for Cape Breton West.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise and say a few words on this particular piece of legislation as it pertains to the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. Mr. Speaker, it's a good piece of legislation on a number of issues. Number one, as it relates to the issue of private roads. Now, having been involved with the issue of land development professionally since 1978, I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, this piece of legislation is long overdue. It's long overdue for a number of reasons, because of the number of changes that have occurred throughout the province, and in particular, the former municipality of County of Cape Breton, which I always felt had some of the best development plans, strategies, and bylaws anywhere in the province. With exception, I would have to say, to the former municipality of the city of Halifax, because it was almost to the point of being in an integrated survey area, and some of the best development plans and strategies. And I suppose I have to compliment all former municipal colleagues, whether they be in Bedford or Dartmouth or Halifax. But this particular issue, it went through a considerable number of forms of osmosis. At one time, you could develop land in this province up to a maximum of 4 lots before you would require to kick in under the Municipal Planning Act, which was, by the way, it was an act, I think, that was introduced and approved under the former Minister of Municipal Affairs, the Honourable Tom McGuinness. So that'll show you how far back this evolutionary process really started. It was in the mid-'80s, around 1984, 85. But the darndest thing, Mr. Speaker, is there was a private roads policy that was in place, that you could have a private road in width of 20 feet or greater that would allow development. And that created a considerable amount of problems for the municipal units as time went by, because of servicing costs, because it became a question of cost versus revenue generated as to whether there was a real cost benefit. And then the subdivision regulations started to change, and then it went down to 2 subdivision lots, and then eventually the 1 subdivision lot. And what it did, it allowed, in time, considerable number of changes. You would be, 1 year, you would allow for a 20-foot ribbon development along the existing highways. Or it could possibly allow for a 20-foot lane, not attached to the lot, but it would allow for several lots to be built. And then eventually get up to the 50 feet and then 66 feet, which was the standard in the province. And then it started to change even more, requiring that the road be built up to highway standard before they would allow it. which basically killed a lot of development in rural Nova Scotia, and in particular the rural part of the municipality of County Cape Breton. And then it went back. It went back to allowing just the right-of-way without the actual development of the road. So there was quite a variance. Since 1995, I've been arguing that what should be done is that municipalities have the right to levy back this charge to individual landowners or developers that would want to develop land in localized situations. Let's say a 20-acre piece of land developed into 2 or 5 acre lots. So we know that it would be only limited development. But the municipality at the time refused to allow that, suggesting what would happen is preferential political treatment would start to be the order of the day. And that precluded this legislation from coming forth. And I'm pleased to see that the minister has challenged that local view by including that initiative in here. Mr. Speaker, as well, the issue that was mentioned by the member for Halifax Atlantic with regards to the tearing down and disposal of schools that are no longer in use. Well, I have to confess, Mr. Speaker, I'm somewhat humbled by what I saw transpire over the last few months between the Cape Breton Regional Municipality and the province of Nova Scotia. The Cape Breton Regional Municipality appeared before our Economic Development Committee suggesting we were not getting our fair share of money. And they may have a very strong basis, in fact, for that. I haven't been able to ascertain the facts and the figures from them despite requests for that information. That is not to say that they are wrong. I have seen, Mr. Speaker, the figures that were put out by the Minister of Energy. Now, whether they are factual, accurate or not, I don't know. I have to assume that they are, because as a Minister of Crown, he has an obligation to tell the truth and provide the facts as they are. Now, that having been said, I was a little disappointed. I was born and raised in a small rural community called Grand Myra South. And there was a school, I started school when consolidation started in the province of Nova Scotia. And that school closed, it first opened in 1959, and it closed just in the fall of 2003. And I was really, really disappointed to see what happened after that, Mr. Speaker, for the disposal of the asset. There was no public tender. There was no call for proposal. There was simply a policy. There was a policy in place that if you, Mr. Speaker, Joe Public, wanted to buy that school, and you knew that that school was surplus property, if you were lucky enough to know that, you could go in, make an offer with somebody giving you an appraisal, your own private appraisal, individual or company, and you could purchase that. Well, that property on the market was appraised at $157,000. It sold for $29,000 plus. And I'm saying to myself, maybe there's good reason for that. But could we not have achieved better value for dollar if that was put out for public tender? Could we not have achieved better value for dollar if at least there was a call for public proposal? Or at least if the people in the community knew about it? That's just one example of the type of disposal of public assets policy that exist. I can give you another example, Mr. Chair, where a piece of commercial property in the heart of Sydney River was sold in a similar context. And there was great disappointment because many people felt that there was a loss of derived benefit for the taxpayers of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. Now, fair is fair, Mr. Speaker. If this piece of amendment in legislation addresses some of these inequities, then I think that's good. But I find it a little embarrassing to come up here and defend a position saying that we're not getting our fair share when we're not managing public assets to the best advantage of the taxpayers of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality and indeed the people of Nova Scotia. And I felt morally obligated to get that on the record, because it's easy to come up here and we all have our political vest and say, well, oh no, it's political posturing by the Minister of Energy, or no, it's political posturing by the Mayor of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality. It's much deeper, Mr. Speaker, and I've raised some of my concerns with the Minister of Service Nova Scotia Municipal Relations during estimates. And I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that there are excellent opportunities to get greater value for our tax dollars than what's being derived. And every day I see problems, such as the water problem in Sydney River, with fecal contamination, and no, not even an application, Mr. Speaker, for a central water system. I see 450 children walking in Floral Heights with no sidewalk to an elementary school, and a regional plan being developed that would preclude any further development. I see, Mr. Speaker, day in and day out, that type of planning policy that is so contradictory to the good value for the taxpayers of the Cape Breton Regional Municipality and the people of Nova Scotia. And I would hope that those two amendments that are included in this Act will speak in some way to correcting some of those injustices. I can go on, Mr. Speaker, but I think my point is well made. If it's not clear to the member for Halifax Fairview, it never will be. He holds himself as a financial guru, but when all these things are happening, and because there may be some loyalties to a particular political philosophy, they won't touch it. They won't touch it. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking to this issue because, yes, it does take issue with some of my friends in the Liberal Party at the municipal level. Yes, it takes issue with some of my friends who are also members of the Conservative Party, and yes, members of that council who are members of the Socialist Party or the NDP Party. This, Mr. Speaker, is an issue of responsibility and due diligence, not petty politics, which has been going on far too long. And, Mr. Speaker, I would hope these two sections of this Act will not just be another piece of paper tiger. We need help. We need direction. And I was pleased to hear the Minister of Municipal Relations and Service Nova Scotia say that he will, that he is going to provide a letter, an undertaking, to CBRM officials and ask why. Why is it that we have the single largest mobile home park on Cape Breton Island, nearly 300 mobile homes, and there's not one regulation in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality to deal with it? Despite the fact that my colleague, the minister, or the leader of the Liberal Party, when he was minister, introduced legislation making provision for them to get that done because they wanted it. And they got it, and they won't do it, Mr. Speaker, because of petty politics. And I thank the minister for at least having the intestinal fortitude to take that issue and deal with it. Mr. Speaker, these two amendments can do so much if they're properly applied. And yes, I do, Mr. Speaker, believe that there are lines of authority and responsibility and protocols that have to be adhered to and respected between the various levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal. But this is not what was contemplated when this act was approved in 1994, or the subsequent legislation in 1995, in the spring of 1995. So, Mr. Speaker, I can go on. I can give you numerous examples of the waste and the poor management. When you have senior officials, well, I'll give you an example, if for no other reason, for the amusement of the member for Timberley Prospect. You have a senior member on that council saying that they should include in their development plan a restriction that there be no nude beaches because the foreigners, the Europeans, are bringing foreign beaches to Cape Breton. Now, what in the name of heavens kind of mindset is going on when they're contemplating that in a regional development plan? It begs you to wonder why there is so much polarization. In the last 6 months, the request for economic development by outside interest for Cape Breton has dropped off by nearly 50% because of all this negativity, and it has to stop. And we all have a responsibility, Mr. Speaker. So yes, I'll support this legislation going on to law amendments, and hopefully maybe there's an opportunity for some improvements. And maybe I digress just slightly, Mr. Speaker, but it's all embodied in planning and development. And these two issues speak very loudly and very clearly to some real problems that have to be addressed. Thank you.
The honourable member for Pictou West.
Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to rise and speak for a couple of minutes on this particular bill and in support of the amendments that are suggested around private roads. And I think any mechanism that's going to allow some conclusion to the problems that we have with private roads and the need to have them taken over by the municipality is good. Because we have a real problem in this province right now with a number of private subdivisions that are sort of at their wits' end and knowing how that they can move forward, with getting the municipality to take them over. They're private roads right now, and they'd like to get them up to the next level, which is J-class roads, so that the municipality would have the right to maintain them and look after them. But under the present legislation, there's really no incentive for a municipality to want to take over a J-class road because then there's going to be a cost. I think the cost-shared agreement with the province right now is somewhere around $4,400 a kilometre per year. And but again, that's an extra cost for a municipality, and so they probably in some respects are balking or finding some way not to take over a road or make sure it's not up to standards in order to save that $4,400 per kilometre. So there's really no great incentive for a municipality to want to take over a private road. So that puts the private homeowners in a disadvantage in that the municipality really doesn't want to deal with them, even though the road might be up to standard. And so they're stuck in limbo because they need their road graveled and ditched and snow plowed in the wintertime and so on. And so all that regular maintenance that goes on all our roads throughout the province or on J-class roads that are under the jurisdiction of a municipality cannot occur on these private roads. So I see in the proposed act, Mr. Speaker, that there is some mechanism here that private roads can be taken over under a bylaw with the municipality, and some mechanism for payment would be, I assume it would be like an area rate where everybody would pay a share or based upon their assessment, and so there would be monies available then to help maintain that particular private road. In the constituency in which I represent, there's a number of subdivisions that are sort of in that limbo situation right now. I'll just mention the ones that are most concerned. In the community of Sylvester in Pictou County, we have what's known as Green Acres subdivision. There are about 30 families that live there. Most of them are in what you call mini homes. It's a mini home subdivision. And they have been struggling and fighting for probably 12 years now to get their road turned over to the municipality. And there's just not a mechanism to make that happen. The developer has spent money trying to upgrade the road. The municipality says, well, no, you got to do more. So the developer does some work, and then the municipality says, no, it's still not up to standard. So it creates a ongoing problem. In the end, the private homeowners still don't have their road up to standard, and they're not getting the maintenance that they require. There's about 30 families in the Green Acres subdivision. Just down the road a little bit is another subdivision. McIntosh Drive is the main street through there. I think it's called Spruce Grove subdivision. There's about 12 families there that are in the same situation. They want their road taken over by the municipality, but again, because there's no mechanism to allow that to happen, it's just not appearing. Another road that in the same situation just back of the town of Westville. It for many years was maintained by the town of Westville. It's actually in the municipality, and it's called the Pump Road, and it's so named because the town of Westville got their water from the Middle River, and the road was accessed to that pumping station. And there's about 8 good quality homes along that street. But again, about 3-4 years ago, the town of Westville abandoned that water system after almost 100 years, and they found another source of water with the town of New Glasgow. And the residents now are left in the lurch, nobody to maintain or look after their road. They too would like to have it turned over to the municipality, but again, it's not wide enough, it's not up to standards, and there's no incentive for the municipality to take it over. And finally, Mr. Speaker, there's a road very near where I live in Loch Broom that has 4 homeowners living on it that share to some extent maintenance, but neighbors being neighbors, not everybody always agrees with what needs to be done. And some are willing to pay the cost for gravel or for ditching or snow clearing. Some of them are not. And so there's a dispute sometimes over what maintenance should be done. So again, I think this bill is good, and that there is a mechanism here that will allow a municipality to take over private roads and bring them up to standard, and everybody will be better off in the end, and that the roads will be looked after. So from that aspect, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill, and I look forward to having it going on to law amendments. Thank you.
Hear, hear. Thank you. Recognize all member for Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to rise and speak on this bill, being a former councillor in HRM, and want to commend the minister for addressing some of the issues we had at that time as councillors, especially when it comes to private roads. In my district at that time, we had many private roads for all kinds of reasons. Sometimes the roads were put there because the people wanted to live on the private road by choice, and they wanted to keep it a private road. But in one particular case, for almost 4 years, we tried to get an area rate put on the road so the money could be reinvested in the road to keep it up in maintenance and repairs. And unfortunately, under the old Municipal Government Act, that wasn't possible. And it appears in this amended copy that will be possible, and I think that's very positive. Because typically what happens, you may have 20 people on a street, and 10 or 12 of them will faithfully give their $100 a year, or whatever it is, to grade the road and remove the snow from it and everything else. The rest of the people refuse to pay. So if you set a system in place where everybody pays equally, the money's put in the fund and administered by the community right on site, so they get the best price for the servicing of the road possible, everybody wins and everybody pays an equal share, as it should be. The other extreme on that is a developer that has gone in years ago, built the road to a certain point, not up to standard by any stretch of the imagination, sold as many properties on it as he could, and he walked away. And here's a road that number one, the developer's got some property left on it. It's not interested in bringing it up to standard because it cost them too much. The owners of the properties on the street simply can't afford to upgrade the road, which may be a couple of $100,000 or more, just bring it up to minimum gravel road standards, and if you have to pave it, it's even more. So it just doesn't make sense for anyone to pay for it. But in the meantime, you don't have garbage service, you don't have other service in the community. Maybe in the wintertime you don't get fire trucks to be able to go up the road because the road isn't plowed or it's too icy, or the situation goes on and on and on. And I'm pleased to see that this bill will address that issue too, providing the residents on the street really want to do something about it and make sure the road is brought up to standard over time, or whatever the case may be, or at least maintained to a level they can get the essential services that's needed on the road. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to make this very brief because is the vacant buildings. I was on the committee in the municipality, dangerous and unsightly premises committee, and so many times we had vacant buildings, we'd place an order on it, and then we'd find out we couldn't place the order, couldn't get anything done with the building, and it made an eyesore. Plus, it was very dangerous in the community where children or other people may get into the buildings, and you've seen many stories in the news about buildings that were derelict and left, and really no way that the municipalities could get in there and repair those buildings. So I think the intent of the law is good. There may be some amendments as we go through the process, and we see from law amendments what the municipalities feel about this and what the general people in the population feel about it. But it appears on the surface to be a reasonably good bill, and I look forward to law amendments, to the amendments come forward, and further debating this bill to make it the best we possibly can to protect the citizens of the municipalities all over the province, and also make it easier for the municipalities to do their business on a regular basis. And that's very, very important as far as I'm concerned as a former councillor, and for the residents that I used to represent. It's very important that the municipality has the ability to do these things, and I stress the ability because I don't think as lawmakers we should force the municipality to do things. We should simply give them the tools to do it. And with that, I'll conclude, and I look forward to law amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Recognized all member for Halifax Clayton Park.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There were a few points that I would like to make about this bill. I think that it's got many, many positive things about it. It seems to address a lot of the issues that municipalities have been bringing forth for a period of time. And there's a few things that I thought were particularly relevant in my area, or certainly from my experience, again, as a city councillor. So one of them certainly was the one mentioned by the member from Preston, who pointed out about the dangerous and unsightly premises. And the point was often raised about boarded up and unsightly buildings, particularly the ones that were boarded up, that there was no length of time by which you could force the owners to do something as long as the building was deemed to be safe. But the fact is, in any community where you have a boarded up building, it's extremely demoralizing, and it affects property values around it, and the people who live in that community feel the impact of having a building that's just really boarded up and useless, and it is a target for vandals at the same time. So we wanted to be able to say that there would be a certain length of time after which we could take some action against those property owners, and it wasn't available to us, so I think it's great to see that come forward. On the development agreements, which are mentioned in there, this bill seems to give more power to the municipalities to move if there are breaches in development agreements, or the developers don't, don't measure up to what they had promised in site plans and in the development agreements. And as you know, that's a very long and drawn-out process to come up with a site-specific plan for development, and that's actually how all the area of Clayton Park West has been developed, and Glenbourne subdivision, and the new subdivisions of Royal Hemlocks, and Bedford South and Bedford West that's coming. And these are huge tracts of land, 500 and 600 acres at a stretch, that are done by development agreement. And if the developers don't do everything that they have promised the public in the first place, we had very little recourse in terms of insisting. And there were a great many examples where the public had pointed out where they had been let down by what was in a development agreement, that it hadn't come to pass, and we didn't have very much power to insist or change what was being done. And I know there were examples in Bedford as well, similar to that, which had come up a number of times at council. So to increase the power of the municipality, to have the power of the Supreme Court to be able to make some improvement on that, I think is much, much better. Another one of the clauses, 18, covers the gives the municipalities the right to demand underground wiring, and that would be, it says for power sources, so it could be telecommunications like telephones, but it could also be for natural gas, and that's a real issue for many of the new subdivisions. We discussed that in HRM about having the new subdivisions begin to lay down the right pipes and whatnot for natural gas, but we didn't have the power to insist on that. And I think that that's the only way we're going to see a distribution network in place after a period of time, is by being proactive and putting it into the newer subdivisions as they come on stream, because especially here in HRM where there's so much rock, it's a lot of blasting. So the time to do it is when you're laying out the streets and putting in the essential services. So I think it's good to give the municipality the option at least of going that route. And also, I'd like to talk briefly about the daycare centers. Section 7 refers to changes in the assessment, or at least giving the municipalities the power to change the assessments for daycare centers. And I really hope that the municipalities will look at this. I realize it now becomes, something in their power to consider whether or not they can afford to do this. But daycare centers are fully taxed as commercial properties, and they also are charged business occupancy tax. And I think that makes it very difficult